everyone. Welcome to Crosswit Live. What is today? Today is the Saturday, the 17th? Okay.
I'm believing it is.
Yeah, so Saturday 17th. We're here at All Time Fitness, and this is a pre-recorded episode, so it's not live. If you're watching this, this is a pre-recorded episode. We want to thank you guys for joining us at Crosswit Talk today. Real quick before I get into what's going on today, I always like to give my social media plugs. Please make sure you go to all of our social media platforms. Obviously on Facebook, if you guys go to the Crosswit page, make sure you follow and like that. Also, you can friend me on my personal page. You can friend any of us on our personal pages. Make sure you please go to Podbean. That is our audio format. So for you podcasters who don't really like to watch stuff, you just want to listen to it, the Podbean app is free on Google Play and iTunes. You can just download it for free, and the podcast is free. Nothing we do costs any money, so support us. Go there, follow us, help us in our numbers. And most importantly, please go to YouTube, our Crosswit channel, and hit subscribe on that button. Watch our videos, leave some comments, tell us you like us, tell us you hate us, whatever. We don't care. We just want to hear from you at some point. So I think that's it. I think it's all social media. Instagram, too. Don't forget about that. And we are here with episode 8. If I'm not mistaken. I know I did a small talk episode, but that doesn't count. So I believe we're at episode 8, and this is episode before Thanksgiving, so happy early Thanksgiving to everyone. And we are here with a good friend of ours, Sara Hartness. And I was thinking, guys, going off of Greg, kind of going off of your catchphrase. If you guys don't know what a catchphrase is, if you haven't looked at the page, it's a Marine, a college professor, and a random guest walk into a bar, and the bartender says it's some type of joke. That's Crosswit. So that's kind of our catch thing. And I was thinking about this last night while I was working, and I said, okay, this is really interesting because we got something different today. So I got a catchphrase just for today's show.
Okay.
All right. A highly intelligent conservative Catholic, a highly intelligent liberal Catholic, and a stupid Catholic walk into a bar. And you have today's episode.
Please don't call me stupid.
You have today's episode of Crosswit. So you guys know who we are. I'm your host, and Greg's your co-host. Today we have Sara Hartness on here. And Sara, I'm going to let you tell everyone about yourself and just kind of roll into that. And just take it from here. Tell us, who you are, where you come from, all the way up to today.
Okay.
Let's hear from you.
All right. So I'm Sara Hartness. I practice law in Monticello, Arkansas. I have for 30 years now.
30 years?
Yeah, born and raised. I am what they call a damn Yankee, a Yankee that comes down and stays, as opposed to going back home. Born and raised in a fairly upper crust suburb of Detroit, right outside of Detroit, and I'm a veteran like you.
That's right.
2 years
Happy
in
late
this
Veterans Day,
man's
by the
army.
way.
That's right. If it hadn't been for this man's army, I would never have gone to law school because I would not have figured I needed to learn the rules.
That's right.
So there we go. Married, got a couple of kids that I've raised down here in Arkansas, a bunch of dogs. Just do a general overall practice here in town.
And you were just to jump right into it. You were raised by a conservative. You come from a conservative family?
Absolutely conservative family.
So tell me, how someone raised in a conservative family ends up as a liberal.
Funny you should ask.
Funny I should ask.
Well, seriously, because in getting ready to, when I finally said, yeah, I'll go on that'll be fun. It's like, what are we going to talk about? And someone years ago taught me that you probably have 3 really brilliant thoughts in your life. And if you have them, hold on to them.
Okay.
And I thought that I would kind of, if I got to choose topics today, talk about my conversion from a born and raised Republican conservative to, I think most people call me a bleeding liberal Democrat.
That's not what most people call you, but that's what most
yeah,
people call you.
well, we can't really. I know that we do cuss on this show, but let's
try to keep it clean.
Keep it a little cleaner than what people call
We'll keep it
me.
in the rated R section.
So, but anyways, so that goes to my topic today, and it is the 20th anniversary of the impeachment of Bill Clinton and the Starr Report, and in fact, while I was looking for addresses last night, I came across my 20-year-old copy of the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette with the Star report that led to the impeachment of Bill Clinton back in 1998. And this was my conversion.
So for I know some of our guests may be too young to even, I mean, they know they've heard Clinton impeached. They may not even understand what impeachment is, and they sure don't know the story behind it. Give us a kind of a backstory on what was the Clinton impeachment and what happened. And
All right, well, and Greg will have to square me away because I may be a practicing lawyer. I'm not a constitutional expert. There is a clause in our Constitution that allows for the impeachment, which is technically, it's very similar to a criminal trial. A trial that if the person against whom articles of impeachment have been issued is convicted in a pseudo trial.
Which happens in the Senate. So the impeachment happens in the House, and the trial takes place in the Senate.
The articles
if
of
they're referred.
The articles of impeachment, and everyone calls it the impeachment, happens in the Senate in the House. It's articles of impeachment which are issued.
Right.
And they are issued in the House of Representatives, and then the Senate tries the case, and the House of Representatives chooses a member of the House to act as the prosecutor to prosecute the case in front of the Senate. And in the Clinton impeachment case, the representative who was chosen to prosecute the articles of impeachment was Asa Hutchinson, who was one of our new young House of Representatives from Arkansas. He was a young Republican, and I think that they chose him because he was from Bill Clinton's home state.
Yeah.
All right?
Okay.
And I will tell you, it didn't take me long to flip so radically to a Democrat. But I tried to explain this to my Republican mother one time in very, very factual terms, and she's no dummy, or was no dummy. And her only comment to me about it was to roll her eyes and say, "Oh, you damn lawyers." So here we go. Ready?
Okay.
And I love this thought, so I really have an opportunity to share it, and I want to. All right. So, anyways, the article, or the Star report, was published in the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, and it was actually 2 sections, and it was very long. When it came out, I read it, and for a lot of you that don't know, under the Constitution, a president or an elected official, a federal judge, can be impeached, or judge can be impeached for high crimes or treason, is I think the standard that it has
well, it's
to
actually
be.
high crimes and misdemeanors.
Is
Oddly
it
enough.
high crimes and misdemeanors?
It is.
It is. All right.
So
well,
treason would fall under, high
okay,
crimes.
good. Thank you. I
yeah.
knew that I would have a constitutional expert here. But so what had happened, and let me see if I can succinctly state it, is when Bill Clinton was elected, there was a question as to whether or not he had taken some illegal campaign contributions by virtue of some real property dealings, the Whitewater, and it was called the Whitewater Affair. And it involved, I think some people will remember the name McDougal. And so Kenneth Starr was appointed by the House of Representatives to conduct an independent investigation into the crimes. So as they start investigating it, Bill Clinton, and I think, Greg, I'm going to rely on your memory, I think Bill Clinton was not only elected by the majority of the Electoral College, but also by the majority of the actual vote.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
so
He's not one of the recent ones that had
Right.
a lower popular vote
Right.
count.
So they start doing this Whitewater investigation into whether or not there were any illegal campaign contributions. And at some point, Monica Lewinsky, who had been a clerk and working in the White House, and I'm surprised to learn today, I'm still hearing about it today on the news, that Monica Lewinsky and Bill Clinton had an affair for 2 years, a consensual affair. And that consensual affair is real important to this legal argument. And so during Kenneth Starr's investigation, and another side note on that is our new Supreme Court Justice. What's his name?
Kavanaugh.
Kavanaugh was one of the lawyers working for Kenneth Starr at the time,
Right.
and he did a lot of the investigations and he did a lot of the writing. So it turns, somehow or another, they get wind that Bill Clinton has had this affair with Monica Lewinsky.
Right.
And in the meantime, running on a parallel track in the United States District Court in Little Rock is a lawsuit filed by a woman named Paula Corbin Jones.
Yeah.
She, if my memory serves me correctly, had asserted that Bill Clinton had sexually harassed her. She was in the lobby of a bar. Some state police came up and said, "Hey, would you like to meet the governor?" She said, "Sure." She went upstairs and she says that...
Actually, and that's one of the details of that. She actually worked at the hotel.
Oh, she did?
They approached her. She was on the job. That's why she brought the sexual harassment.
Oh, in a workplace.
It
Okay.
was workplace, and
All right.
so they ended up adjudicating it sort of against her, even though Clinton ended up settling it. But yeah, that was sort of the legal theory behind her.
Behind
Yeah.
her, because then it was a federal court case, and
Yeah.
it was assigned to Susan Weber Wright, who was a United States District Court judge in Arkansas, who had been appointed by the last Republican president before that. Anyways, so in the Paula Corbin Jones case, she has alleged non-consensual sexual conduct. All right. Now, you, Casey, as a police officer, are you familiar with what the rape shield statutes are?
I don't think
All
so.
right. So rape shield statutes are whenever there's a rape case or a non-consensual sex case, consensual sex is never relevant. It's never allowed in. All right?
Okay.
Because back in the day, if a woman would allege that I've been raped, they'd traipse in everybody that she had
Yeah.
ever had consensual sex with,
And try to basically paint her
Yeah.
as a...
Yeah.
make her look like Jane, you ignorant slut, and
Right.
and her assailant would
Sorry, live reference there, Jane, you ignorant slut.
and her assailant would get off. So
Okay.
we've got this case going over here in U.S. District Court in Arkansas, and Kenneth Starr's people, and I may not be right on my timing about this, find out about the Monica Lewinsky affair. Find out that the president is engaged in this affair with Monica Lewinsky because she had confided in a friend that she trusted, and that friend recorded her conversations.
Wow, good for him.
And
And I think that was in one of those states where you didn't have to have consent. It was-
no, you did. She
You did.
wound up getting
Oh, okay.
prosecuted for it.
Yeah, I couldn't remember. And that was
You
Linda.
talking about consent to record?
Yeah. What was
Okay.
her name? Linda?
Linda Starr? Linda?
No. But
No, Ken
okay,
Starr is
good.
the-
Google it.
I'm
So
So she didn't have she had permission to
she
record.
did not have permission to record it. Monica Lewinsky.
And you had to have it.
You did have
Okay,
to have it.
gotcha.
All right.
Okay.
And so it was Linda is the first
Yeah.
name.
I don't
but
know why I'm blanking on it, but
if I recall right, she wound up getting prosecuted by it. So anyways, so we rock along, and in the Paula Corbin Jones case, they send out subpoenas to take depositions of both Monica Lewinsky and Bill Clinton. And that was a big deal. The Supreme Court allowed them to take a deposition of a sitting president in a civil case while he was sitting. And so in the Paula Corbin Jones case, they asked Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky, have you had sexual relations? Linda Tripp. And I think the way it ultimately wound up is that they technically, I don't know how you define sexual relations, but I think that they had engaged in some heavy stuff.
A little bit of blowjob going on there.
Yeah,
in
but
the
yeah,
Oval Office.
that's it. So I think, and I'm not so sure about this, but I think in the depositions they both denied any sexual conduct, and
yeah, that yielded one of the most interesting answers to a question in a deposition I have ever heard in my life, and I want to talk about that too as a little
we
tangent.
will. And I've never researched it, and
But that was when Bill Clinton said it depends upon what the
What
meaning
your-
of the word is.
because And we get back to you guys' definitions.
That is
Yeah.
slick shit
No,
right there.
it's not.
Oh, come on.
It's
Little
not.
bit. All right.
Because our whole legal system is based on knowledge and having advanced knowledge of what's legal and what's not legal. And in order to have knowledge of what's legal and not legal, you've got to have definitions.
Right.
Definitions are everything in the legal system. So anyways, this report comes out and I read it and we come to the point, I'm so happy I found it last night.
This is the original.
This is the original newspaper article. I mean, it was so important that I kept it with my kids' school records. So they issue this Star report, and I don't know how many pages it was, and if anybody that's old enough to remember it, it was quite salacious. Is that the right word?
That is the right word.
It was actually read like a porn novel. Every detail of the sexual activity was laid out in detail, unnecessarily detail, but the idea was to humiliate him. And so I'm reading this report, and we get to the point where it starts talking about grounds for impeachment. And some of the grounds are that President Clinton lied under oath in his civil case when he denied a sexual affair. So now listen, this is where we get to the definition of impeachment.
Right.
High crimes and misdemeanors, right?
Okay.
And so when I was in undergraduate getting ready to go to law school, I took a legal writing class.
Okay.
And my daughter-in-law is now a lawyer, and she took legal writing, and I said, are you guys still using IRAC? Yes. Issue, rule, argument, and conclusion. Every legal brief is written like that. The issue before the court is blah, 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 blah.
Right.
The next section is the rule of law on this issue
Right.
is : indented, quotation marks, and single spaced. So in every legal brief, you state this is what the law is. So in essence, what they had done is they had accused the President of the United States of committing perjury. He lied under oath. He lied under oath. He lied under oath.
So yeah, he was not impeached for having an affair. He was not impeached for being
Right.
embroiled in any. He was impeached for lying during a legal deposition.
Lying, okay, all right, lying under oath.
Right.
And so do you assume that lying under oath is perjury?
That I don't know, because I don't know what
See?
the legal definition
There
is.
we go.
Yeah.
Back to those
There,
damn
there
definitions.
we go to those
Those
damn
definitions.
Those damn
Every time.
definitions. So I'm sitting there on my swing on my front porch, and I'm looking, and I'm reading, and I'm going,
Having some Irish coffee.
where's the definition? No, it was early in the morning. It was a Sunday morning.
Having 2 Irish coffee.
Yeah. Where's the definition? So I have to get my butt up, go back to my law library, pull out my criminal code, and get the definition for perjury. And the definition for perjury is, quote, unquote, indented, single-spaced, knowingly making a false or misleading statement about an issue which is relevant to the question before the bar. And remember, now we go back to the rape shield statutes.
Okay.
Because consensual sex is never relevant in a non-consensual case. Now, and also, at the same time all of this was going on, I'm prosecuting my own sexual harassment case in another county, and my cute little client, who truly had been sexually harassed by her boss, and her husband worked for the same guy, and it was a terrible case, and it wound up settling well. But she comes into my office one day and she says, oh, look, I found this in the newspaper. It's the Rutherford Institute. They help women who have been sexually harassed. They help give money for the lawsuits. And I said, no. That is a vast right-wing conspiracy. They won't do that. And she said, oh, but they said they will. And I said, all right, I'll give it a shot. I'll apply for a grant. So I did. I applied for $3,000. We need to take a bunch of depositions. We need to spend some money on this case. And they write me a letter back and they say, your request has been granted. So I call my client and I go, I was wrong. It wasn't a vast right-wing
right.
conspiracy. They're sending us $3,000, but they're also sending us the paperwork first. Ever wonder why we've never heard from Paula Corbin Jones? Why she's never written a book? Why we've never seen her on the talk
that's what the
circuits?
paperwork was.
Because that's what the paperwork was. My client, we did not take the $3,000. My client would have had to have sold her right to control her litigation.
Wow.
Sold her right to her life story. Sold her right to even control how she dressed in public.
Right.
So we did not take, then that's why I've seen Paula Corbin Jones on a talk series one time, and I watched, fascinated, come on, I want to hear what she says. And the only thing she said was, when it was over, I just didn't have as many friends as I thought I did.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, it did turn out to be a vast right-wing conspiracy.
Well,
That
and for
was
those
dis-
of you who are too young to remember, that case ended up being settled by Bill Clinton for $800,000.
I think 7 or 8, or maybe 9.
And he was, what do you call it? Was he disbarred in Arkansas for 5 years?
He voluntarily surrendered his law license for 5 years. He wasn't practicing law in
Yeah,
Arkansas.
yeah.
It didn't matter. You know, he was done practicing law.
And people asked me when it happened, I was convinced he was not going to be removed from office. There was no way that was going to happen.
Right.
The whole thing was political theater. And people asked me at the time, what do you think is going to happen? And I said, my hope was that they'd split the baby. You know, that they write the articles of impeachment and then he's acquitted in the Senate, which is what happened. And of course it was by a straight up, wasn't the Senate split completely in half, and it had to be.
I don't know what
and
happened.
so Al Gore was the one that got to come in and make
Yes.
the tie-breaking vote.
I did not watch that because once I got done with realizing,
You were
with reading this, I was done. I wasn't taking any more of it serious. Whereas you think it was good that they issued the articles of impeachment.
No, I didn't think it was
Oh.
good. I thought that's what was going to happen.
I thought they brought this country to a constitutional crisis.
And I agree with that.
On an absolute lie.
But
all right?
it's interesting now to consider it in light of the Me Too movement and all of the sort of 2020 stuff that's going on, because culturally that ended up being a really important moment. You know what I mean?
But from a legal standpoint,
Right.
and from an American standpoint, I wasn't concerned about the Me Too movement. I mean, we all knew when Clinton was elected that he was a slut. I mean, we had
Right.
the flowers and we had all of that other stuff, but we elected him, you know? And so, but the thing that was so important to me is that every senior undergraduate pre-law student would have known, and this Star report was technically a legal brief to the Congress.
But but we do have to make the point that impeachment is not a legal process; it's a political process. So it doesn't act exactly like the law. I think your points are very well taken.
It's a pseudo-legal process, and it does affect your rights, and so therefore it carries with it all of the due process
but
protections.
your point about perjury and or lying under oath has to do with the fact that the question wasn't cogent to the issue of the deposition.
Question was not relevant.
Right.
The question about whether or not he had an
consensual
affair, a
relationship,
consensual relationship with Monica Lewinsky was irrelevant.
So what was their reason, or what was the excuse, or what was the reason for bringing it up or asking it? I mean, it wasn't relevant, but what was the reason why it was there? How did they argue relevance?
I don't, because I've never read those deposition transcripts.
Yeah.
But the testimony.
Or was it just a trap question because they knew he was going to lie about it, or they knew he was going to?
Well, I think
it was a trap question.
It was a trap question, and they did know that he was going to lie about it, and so that tells you who truly was controlling Paula Corbin Jones's litigation.
Okay.
But the testimony was taken in a deposition. And so whenever there's litigation, what you're allowed to ask is oftentimes pretty broad because you're trying to discover relevant evidence to the case.
Okay, so you're in a search of relevant evidence.
So you're in search of relevant evidence when you're in the discovery phase of a trial.
Okay.
So, you know.
And don't forget, too, that the Jennifer Flowers thing, you know, these were called the bimbo eruptions, right?
Right.
And the Jennifer Flowers thing happened before the election. That was
long before that was.
The Jennifer Flowers, and he had always denied that. And then the.
Wasn't she like hot? I'm just saying.
I don't remember.
Paula Jones wasn't, but I think Jennifer Flowers was.
By the time they got done with Paula Jones's plastic surgery, she looked much better.
To your point. To your point, and by the way, I think Paula Jones did do a celebrity boxing match against Tanya Harding.
Yeah, she did. She did.
Oh,
but
we've
no,
got to find that, man.
but no, she never said anything.
Right.
Yeah, she didn't talk.
She did do that, you know, Tanya Harding
I'm
versus
gonna
Paula
Google it
Jones.
right now.
We got to find it. Did you hear that?
But-
so Tanya
but-
Harding and Paula Jones had a boxing match?
Yes, celebrity boxing.
We have to edit that in somehow. Like when we record this, we got to get that footage in behind us or something. I don't know.
That'd be a good idea. But no, Sarah, to your point too, about the deposition and what the relevance was. I think at that point, what the opposing attorneys were trying to do, and I wonder who was acting as Clinton's attorney in that deposition.
I think that he had a team of attorneys,
right?
And I will tell you, the judge sat in those depositions,
right,
to make any rulings and on any issues.
It's just curious to me, but he had denied the affairs that he'd been accused of, and he I don't remember if before or after the deposition he has said very famously, wagging his finger at the television screen, "I did not have sex with that woman."
It was before. That was when it
so
first
that's where
broke
the
out.
attorneys came with this line of questioning, because they were trying to establish not prior consensual sexual relations of Paula Jones, which would have been barred by the rape shield law, but his pattern of behavior, of having affairs. So they were trying to get him to admit that he has stepped out on his wife in the past, and he didn't know that they knew about Monica Lewinsky. He didn't know that Linda Tripp was working with them, and she was the one that provided the attorneys with the information about Monica Lewinsky. And also famously, Linda Tripp was the one that convinced Monica Lewinsky to save the blue dress. Don't send it to the dry cleaners.
Right.
Because it had a stain on it.
Is that at the library now? The Clinton Library?
No, I'm pretty sure it's not. Would not be at the Clinton Library.
Is it at the Bush Library?
Yeah.
You know, there's that old Leonard Cohen famous Blue Raincoat song.
I'm just curious because I have told people when I was in the Camp Lejeune, people would ask me about the Clinton Library, and I would say, like, hey, what's in there? I was like, I don't know, maybe the blue dress. Have you ever been there? No, I've never been there. To me, it's like a trailer on the river. Okay, but it's sad that I've never been, because I've actually always planned on going to look at it. And you know, when you take stuff, I guess if you live by Disney World, you probably don't go as much as.
Right.
Yeah. But I have never even been inside the Clinton Library.
I have gone.
Have
I've
you?
gone
I need
once.
to.
I'd like to go back up again.
I need to go in there. I've never done it.
My wife's been there several times, but I haven't been, and I want to go too.
It's got a good mock-up of the Oval Office, and
really.
But my big interest when I went
is there a cutout of money? Okay, I'll
stop. We're not going to reduce this to that smut level.
Well, still
you guys always want to go there.
It's a comedy show too, though, Sarah. It's not.
You guys always want to go there.
Well, I mean,
Let's
everyone's
talk about
jealous.
the
I
smut.
mean, Okay, so.
No, I will tell you in one of my depositions that I was taking, they brought this Greek god in to talk about my mouse of a client flashing herself to him, and I got to say on the record, I hate to ask the Bill Clinton question, but did you notice any distinguishing features?
Right.
And this guy described.
But the blue dress ended up being sort of the linchpin in the whole case, because they did DNA testing on it, and they proved that it was Bill Clinton's biological material.
Yep.
As it were. So, and that sort of blew the doors off of all of the denials, and I think that's when he settled the case with Paula Jones, and then he had to go on television and admit that he had this affair.
What?
No, I'm just saying, like, he disappoints me right there, because I mean, a real player wouldn't have it'd been like my DNA on the dress. I mean, someone took that. Let me tell you something. I donated a lot of DNA to Sperm Bank a long time ago.
It was very specific. Yeah. DNA.
I mean, wasn't me.
And Monica Lewinsky just published a book about all this, so I've been seeing blurbs coming out the It's 20th anniversary. So
It is
her
the
book's coming
20th
out.
anniversary, and there is a
see what she looks like.
documentary on it.
Yeah, and she says in her book apparently that she didn't know what that stain was. She thought it was.
It looked like the
She
same
thought
one
it
that was
was
on her
spinach
chin.
dip.
She was 22.
Yeah.
And she truly was in love with him. And
Really?
oh man.
See, this is
And I
why I think
always
he
felt
answered the
sorry
question the
for
way he
her.
did.
To
This
protect
is-
her?
No, I think this is what happened. I think after all the ashtrays in the president's residence got thrown at him.
I heard a couple of
Yeah.
lamps.
Yeah,
I think he
lamps
was trying
and
to
whatnot.
protect her from Hillary.
No, I think this is it. I think that the legal age of consent in Washington D.C. and the legal age of consent in the congressional district that her father represented, because she was the daughter of a
Thought she was from California.
she was,
All
and
right,
her
yeah.
dad, he was either in the state house or he was a House of Representatives from California.
Okay.
But I kept going over that. What kind of answer is that is thing? You know what I mean? Why would he? But he was answering a question about when the affair with her began. And I think that he was being squirrely because if he told the truth about when the affair began, it might have turned out that she wasn't age of consent in her home district.
No.
She was of age of consent in.
No.
But I didn't look it up.
Because it was a 2-year affair, and she was 22 years old when it all blew sky
Well, that's
high.
what they said.
Well, I know one thing. When you
But I'd
type
have
in
to look it
Monica
up.
in Google, it automatically comes up Lewinsky today. So apparently everyone
Yeah.
wants to know what this girl looks like right now.
Well,
But-
no, but remember the 21st Amendment had
Yeah.
already passed, so 18 would have been the age of consent.
I think it was 17 in Washington, D.C. And
Well,
I
yeah.
remember that being the case. But my point was, I think that what the calculation was, and this was cultural, not legal or political,
Right.
political, was that if she was still even 19, even if she was above the age of consent, that the American public would not tolerate that. 20, okay, but not 19. But then that's just speculation on my part.
Well, and they may have been looking or trying to discover a crime there. But my
No, I don't
whole-
mean the prosecutors were trying to find it as a crime. I'm thinking that the Clintons themselves decided that there was a line that the American public would
A
not.
public relations issue?
Yeah,
Oh,
see,
it-
because we've been John F. Kennedy was as big a philanderer or more
Oh.
as Bill Clinton.
Happy
And-
birthday,
yeah.
Mr. President.
And the American
Yeah.
public has
Well,
known that for
Did we
forever.
know? I mean, was that okay? So let me ask you this, because I don't know anything about this. Did the American people at that time? I mean, because I know today you can't. I mean, it seems like you can't do anything without people finding out. But did people know at that time what Kennedy was doing, or is that something that came out years later? Or is
No.
Is that
I-
kind of
I
normal?
think
it's
that
an
that
open
was,
secret. It's
well,
one of
it
those
was,
open secrets in Washington, D.C., so all the political players in the world knew.
Yeah.
I
But I
think,
thought the public though.
but that was back in the day. That was early 60s when men regularly had affairs,
Yeah,
and
that's-
and no, but just polite company didn't talk about
Exactly.
it. It
Right.
was never
Gotcha.
discussed in polite company.
That was back in the Rat Pack days, and it was something that the American public
right.
in the early '60s just really wasn't interested in knowing about.
It wasn't going to be brought up.
It
even
was
if
not going to be brought up. And
Today it's like everything comes out.
Well,
well, it's so strange because we're becoming weirdly. People have said the politically correct atmosphere that we live in now is like Orwell's 1984, and they really need to go read Fahrenheit 451 because that's what it's more like. And Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury is a book about the Puritanism that comes from the ground up, not from the top down, not
Right.
from the authorities
Right.
down, but it comes as a grassroots kind of thing. And I think we've entered that kind of phase in culture right now. So we have this very schizophrenic attitude about libertinism on the one hand.
Yeah.
Everybody ought to be able to do whatever they want as long as everybody's consenting, right?
Right.
And then this judgmentalism on the other hand, because a movie just came out with the guy that plays Wolverine in the X-Men movies, and it's a biography of Gary Hart.
Okay.
And the grand irony of this is that Gary Hart was the guy that was on his way to the Democratic nomination when his political career was derailed by a consensual affair with a woman
yes.
on the boat, monkey
Yes,
business.
monkey business.
And guess who got the nomination instead of him?
Clinton.
Bill Clinton.
Oh yeah.
So there's this delicious irony in the fact that his political career is derailed because of an affair, and then Bill Clinton gets the
and then
nomination
recall
and wins
also
twice.
Recall also who was the big Democrat that was Ron Edwards.
Well, that was a little bit later, but yeah.
Yeah,
John Edwards.
John Edwards.
John Edwards, yeah.
Was running
He was
for...
North Carolina senator, right?
Yeah.
He
'Cause
was, and he was
and he was
running...
the
He was
Vice
my
president.
senator when I was in the Marine Corps
Right.
at Camp Lejeune. So I
he
remember
was
that.
he was seeking the nomination to the Democratic Party
And
when
he was on the road, wasn't he?
he was looking good, and then a baby came out. And I think what outraged everybody so much is that this baby fell out of the closet at a time when his wife was
She was dying of cancer.
she was dying of
Yeah,
cancer.
that's right.
And
Yeah, I
that's
remember
where
that.
And so that ended up being completely.
It was more than an affair. It was like, dude, really?
No,
I mean,
Yeah.
your wife
actually,
is,
they attempted to prosecute him for campaign finance violations.
I remember that too. Yeah.
Because he had to raise some money from some people to help pay this videographer off, supposed videographer.
Yeah.
right.
You remember that? And
Yes.
they failed, by the way. They did not find that John Edwards had committed a campaign finance by converting campaign money into personal use kind of thing. That's what they were accusing him of. But that did end his political career, and I think it more had to do with the fact that his wife was dying than
I
it
think
had,
I think
had to
that
do with having an affair.
So let's jump from the Clinton thing to the Kavanaugh thing. For the people like me who know kind of but not really, what the hell? Like what is I mean, like seriously, was there is this just some girl making a bunch of shit up? Was there any evidence found to it? Was there not any evidence found? Like is
oh
it?
man, I got theories.
Okay, because it from what I've seen, does this guy's name just get drugged through the trash for no reason? I mean, is he now he's like Kavanaugh and rapist
Well,
anonymous?
we'll
Right.
never know. We will never know. We'll never know the truth. But here's my theory on it. Okay.
Oh God, I hope it's funny.
Well, it's not. It's not. But back in the day, that was guys in high school.
Oh, so what was the actual
All right,
his story? I don't even.
Okay.
Some people don't even know that.
No,
right.
I can retell it really quickly, Sarah.
Okay.
and then go to what
go
you're
ahead
saying.
and do it.
So the accusation was that when he was in high school,
Okay. When Kavanaugh was in high school,
when
this
Kavanaugh
is
was
16,
in high
17
school,
years old.
right? He
I
went to
like
a,
beer.
He went to a boys' prep
I
school.
drank a lot of beer.
He comes from a fairly upper middle class, background.
Probably the neighborhood, a similar neighborhood to what I grew up in.
By the
Okay.
way, when I moved to Arkansas, I met Sarah and found out that she grew up in the same place as my wife.
Right,
And
right,
so we instantly
right.
had this bond. She's like, "You're
Right.
kidding me? What a small world! How do
I
you
know,
end up
it's
in
a
Monticello,
really small-
Arkansas?
yeah, it's-
married to a girl that went to high school. She went to Our Lady Star of the Sea.
And then there was a professor out there who lived in Grosse Pointe when
Yeah.
when his wife managed the tile company.
Oh, okay.
There's a really unique tile pottery store in Detroit.
I think I've been to it.
Quebec pottery. Yeah.
But anyway, so what was her name? Christine Blasey Ford.
Yes.
Yes.
She alleged that she
Something like
went
that.
to a party with some boys that she didn't really know. And
She was on her way back from swim practice because
Right,
she had her
right.
suit on.
And she went to a
Her
house that
Speedo.
was somewhere near the country club. And at some point, Brett Kavanaugh and a friend of his pushed her into an upstairs bedroom. And he started groping her. And she said she thought that at one point he might accidentally kill her. And his friend stood by and alternatively told him to cut it out and egged him on. And at one point jumped on the bed and they all tumbled off and she was able to get away, lock herself in a bathroom. They stumbled drunkenly downstairs. And after she could tell that they had sort of turned the corner, she immediately left the house.
Okay.
And she doesn't remember how she got home. But she was sure that it was Kavanaugh that did
And
it.
we know for a fact that Bill Cosby was not there.
Right.
Okay, that's more important.
Boy, didn't that break my heart.
Man.
Oh.
Cosby, really?
That's next.
Out of all the
topic.
people
Yeah.
that give me
So
date
what's
raping,
your theory?
Here's my theory on it. Because I grew up kind of in that realm and we had these great parties and people's parents were never home and so we had these huge houses and these big parties and everybody drank a lot, right?
Yeah.
And guys egging on guys, and if I suspect he was telling the truth when he said I was a virgin, and here he's got his
Right.
buddy egging him on, going, "Yeah, go!"
Yeah.
And so now he's challenged, and so he goes in and fumbles around like a young dumb kid,
Yeah.
which is what she made it sound like.
Yeah.
Just a dumb fumbling when we're drunk, stupid decision, and I think. What I think is kind of so sad about it is that I think that Kavanaugh had an opportunity when it came out to go, man, we drank a lot at that age, and I don't really remember. Could it have happened? Yes. Kavanaugh had an opportunity to say, man, if it happened, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. He could have.
He could have.
If.
And all he would have had to have done is said
if. Thought it was more likely to be true than not. But he absolutely denied it. And the thing about Miss Ford's, Dr. Ford's testimony is that at the very beginning, Sarah, my attitude about it was, it sounds to me like something did happen to her, but I'm not sure that it was Kavanaugh that did it. And I don't know if you know this, Sarah, but a guy came out and offered a letter saying that he thought maybe he was the guy she was referring to, because he did remember going to a party. But here was the thing: nobody else that she named as at the party corroborated, and one of them was a lifelong best friend, corroborated.
We don't know that. We're getting that from the press releases, and of course we do.
No. I read the Grassley report. Her friend that said that she said was at the party with her wrote a letter to Grassley and said, "I don't know Brett Kavanaugh. I've never met him, and I have no memory of what she's described."
All right. What was that name?
Grassley. He was the head of the whatever you call it in the hearings.
Well, that's the White House press secretary said the same thing the other day. And of course, I don't know if what.
What was her name?
I don't. Oh, Blasey Ford.
Okay.
But and I don't want to get tripped up on details because the whole I started out by thinking that she was telling the truth, but she did a couple of strange things. I thought she was woefully misrepresented by her attorneys out in California, because the other thing that the Grassley Commission did is Grassley offered through her attorneys to have his staff fly out to California instead of making her come to Washington to testify publicly. He also offered her the opportunity to testify privately, and that they would go to her.
Okay.
And when she testified publicly and was asked about why she didn't take them up on that offer, she said, I was fuzzy about whether that was actually offered or not, and because she claimed that she was afraid to fly. She said one of the results of this episode in her life is that she didn't like to be in enclosed spaces where there wasn't more than one exit. And that's the other reason, Sarah, that I have some suspicions about her entire testimony, is because somebody pulled the permits on her house in California. So it got asked, when did you tell people about this incident that happened? Because she didn't tell anybody in high school. And she
you know
said
what?
it came
As a
up,
girl of that age, you
of
would
course.
never have.
I
would never have
I totally
told
accept
anyone.
that. I really do. But a couple of things that did bother me about it is she said it came up with her and her husband when they were in couples therapy, because they had been arguing about putting a second front door on her house, I think in Palo Alto,
Yeah, that's right.
California, right? Well, then it turns out somebody pulled the permits on that to see when the construction happened. And the construction happened 3 years before the counseling session that she's reporting she first brought up Kavanaugh's name to her counselor and to her husband. So, you know what I mean? And then they looked at the construction, and they were like, what they did to their house was they added an apartment. And the laws in Palo Alto require certain things about if you're going to put a second entrance. So the second entrance on her house was separate from her living space anyway. So the idea that she put it on there to have a second escape route.
So you think that this woman would have exposed herself to that sort of public
How much money has she made since
humiliation?
then?
I don't think has she made any?
She's made over $1 million in her GoFundMe, and she's gotten book offers that are worth six figures, six or seven figures.
So in essence,
And look, I don't want to cast aspersions on her character. I'm just saying that is what she did.
but she didn't accuse him of actual. This wasn't a rape. This
No,
was just a
it
sexual
was-
misconduct.
Well, here's the
when
other
he was
thing.
16.
It happened in Maryland, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I looked up the statutes in Maryland for
Yeah,
1982.
what is legally what is sexual misconduct?
And
versus
I think if
sexual-
she had tried to prosecute for the incident, and everybody else said the same thing.
Right.
We didn't see it. We didn't.
Right.
And his friend denied it, and he denied
Right.
it. They wouldn't have prosecuted in Maryland
Well, no,
at the time.
and I don't think anyone was asserting that it was a crime.
Right.
It
Well,
was
no,
just,
under the statute, somebody pointed this out to me because they looked it up. They said under the statute, it was a crime in Maryland at the time. It would have been a misdemeanor, but it was a crime.
well,
But he's also how old was he?
16.
So he's a juvenile.
So
Right,
it
right,
would have
right.
been prosecuted as a juvenile.
So is that
anyways.
where we're going? I mean, like, are we in the world right now? Because I'm gonna tell you right now, and I'll never run for fucking office. I mean, I wouldn't, but I would suck at it. But I'm just saying, like, is that where we're
I
going?
suck at it.
Well,
But we're proud of you.
but I'm
Thanks,
just saying,
honey.
like, is that
And
where
I
we're at
voted
now?
for
To
you.
where
Thanks.
I mean, 16, we're bringing up misconduct when I was 16. That's all I did
Oh my
when I was
God.
16.
Listen.
That's all I did when I was 16. I
Listen.
don't know what the opposite of misconduct
Oh
was
my,
when I was 16.
you have no idea. Probably 10 or 15 years ago, Time Magazine put out front cover that they had done all these CAT scans on a whole generation of kids, and the frontal lobes, the human brain does not fire up, doesn't get charged until you're 21, 22 years old. And I
Yeah.
read that and went,
Oh, that explains a lot.
thanks.
explains
That
everything.
explains
We're
a ton.
actually really stupid until that point.
Biologically stupid.
Biologically
I
stupid.
showed my kids that and went, you guys are biologically stupid.
Yeah.
If you think something's a good idea,
It's
chances
not
are
a
it's
good
not.
idea.
Tell-
What
talk
did
to me.
what did
Please
Dave
count to
Pearson
10.
say on Saturday Night Live? He goes, what it would be a surprise to all the people who know me. I made a poor decision.
I made a
Oh,
poor
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I loved that.
Yeah.
Wasn't that a cool thing?
Yeah, they
The
handled
way
that.
Both of
and
them.
we were talking about this before, and I know me and Matt talked about it, and I've told everyone, because as soon as I watched that, I posted it. I saw it before it really got popular. I mean, I know it was popular because it's SNL, but I saw it before social media started really getting it and doing it. And the thing that, because I didn't really know what happened. I saw the clip of the thing, and I was like, what the hell are they talking about? So I had to go back and see what had actually happened. And when I saw what had happened, I was actually furious that, because I started reading all the commentary and I started watching YouTube videos of people responding to what the comedian had said and stuff, and I'm going, this is the shit we bitch about all the time. People getting offended over every damn thing, and you can't say anything, and the triggers and all this, and then we turn around and we talk about the left and we say you guys are offended and triggered over everything, and then this dude makes a joke on a show that makes fun of people. That's all they've done for like 40,000 years.
Right.
And then everyone's like, we need to have his ass fired and.
When you run for public office, you open yourself up to all. You're not protected by the slander statutes and anything like that.
Yeah, and I was really pissed off when military guys, Marines, and I watched YouTube videos of dudes and they're freaking going off on this dude on SNL, and I'm sitting there going, are you effing kidding me right now? The shit we say to each other on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Nothing's off. Like if you've been in the Army, if you've been in the Marine Corps, you live in South Park.
God.
You live in South Park. And
By the way, South Park to this day I think the guys that write South Park are heroes.
Are genius.
I do.
I just have never been able to because I was a mother of small children when it came out.
Right.
And
I wouldn't recommend it for kids, but the reason I like it,
I wouldn't recommend it for kids. I mean, if you want to let your kids watch it, they're stupid. Their frontal lobe's gone, so now you're gonna.
And they'll think that's proper behavior.
No, but they're equal opportunity satirists, and so they do satire across the entire spectrum, and it's really brilliant.
But where was I? Okay, so yeah, what I was saying is, I mean, it seems to me that, and I don't know where it started. That's kind of why I was wanted to do the Clinton thing, because that's as far back as I remember. I know a lot of stuff happened with Reagan. I remember stuff with Reagan.
I enlisted in the Army. I swore in the day Richard Nixon resigned from office.
Okay,
that's how old I am.
Are we?
My eye doctor tells me my cataracts were early onset.
Guess who worked as a junior attorney and got fired, prosecuting or getting ready to prosecute Nixon for impeachment? Hillary Clinton.
Really?
Yeah, she got fired.
I don't know that she got fired. My mom also told me Hillary Clinton was a lesbian. I had to look at her and say, really, Mom, did you sleep with her? I mean, I think that a lot of that information, when we get it from the National Enquirer, it broke my heart when I realized.
No, now I trust the National Enquirer.
Oh.
They won't print anything that they can get sued for. Carol Burnett took care of that.
Oh. Yeah, but the buying, what do they call it?
They're like the bankrupt
buy and kill. What do they call it? Capture and kill stories.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no. I mean, I used to. National Enquirer my whole life has been one of my guilty pleasures, and now it's like never again, because they have violated their contract with the American people. We're going to give you trash crazy news and you guys are going to like it, and now it turns out that they've been manipulating the electorate, and that's where my mom got.
I think TMZ might be your new go-to then.
Okay, I'll
Check
be
them
all
out
right with
online.
that. I did catch myself last night watching something. I don't know. It was
So a couple of things, and this is I forgot one of them already.
That's all right.
No, go back to the
Peterson and Crenshaw thing.
Well, I was going to so is this where we? Because it seems like I remember, it's like every president or everything we did. conservative or Republican, Democrat, whatever. Are we just now do we live now in a society where no matter who gets elected, we're just going to attack them and attack them?
You know what?
And are we
Let
not
me
destroying
tell
the office?
Let me tell you.
I mean, what is this going to?
As long as we, the electorate, as long as we, the voters,
Yeah.
allow that to behave, allow that to happen, it will continue. People get more motivated by anger, and they're more motivated by hatred. We're at a point right now where you can't compromise. That's what you're supposed to be doing up there. Yeah. Compromise. It's not a battle. We're trying to run the country. We're telling him
he's an elected official is considered a traitor if they're compromising. What the hell do we elect him for? We're supposed to be. What? Are we not supposed to be?
I don't know. I hate compromise myself.
Okay,
I would rather both sides.
Really?
Yeah, this is from a philosophical point of view.
This is good. I like now we're getting.
Oh.
And the reason I hate it is because,
that's a pig-headedness coming out of them.
Exactly. No, a platypus is an animal that was
we
designed
talked about
by a
this
committee.
last time. Actually, I know where you're going with this.
You know what I mean? Compromise gives
the
everybody not what they wanted. And so what I would rather have, and I tell my students this, and especially in philosophy and logic classes, what I want people like you and me, who are willing, with a smile on our face, to make the arguments that we make in a free market of ideas, and win or lose, and then come back the next day for the next one.
But you and I, when we have our great arguments and our great arguments, we are not in the business of running a country.
You're right.
And for the most part, the best way to resolve a conflict is through compromise. When we negotiate compromises in lawsuits all the time, I always tell my client, if both of you are unhappy, chances are we got a good solution.
Yeah.
Because
that's a compromise.
Yeah.
That's a T-shirt right there.
Yeah, because you've got conflicts, and if one party feels like they necessarily lost, then you've got the anger and the bitterness and the resentment, and then we wrap it up in the midterms.
I read another attorney made this point in an article on Powerline blog, which is one of my favorite blogs. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But they wrote, I don't know why everybody's gets so upset about gridlock. It's about the closest thing to constitutional government you're going to get. And I'm like, he's making a point. Sometimes, you remember Reagan's famous line, don't just do something, stand there?
Right.
Telling Congress,
I will tell you.
You don't have to make all these laws. Why would Americans want Congress to be making more laws?
Well, the silver lining behind the Clinton thing was that Congress was so obsessed with destroying Clinton that they didn't do anything. Right. The economy shot up, the government ran, the country got real good, and I thought, when it was all said and done, wasn't that nice? Congress couldn't do anything.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
No. That was my only point.
I think in order for the country to run well, we have to authorize our representatives to compromise and to use their best judgment. Yeah. We elect them because we think they've got good judgment.
Yeah.
Well, I guess coming from a military aspect, I worked for the State Department. Of course, I protected people. I didn't in any way negotiate anything, but I did get to witness a tremendous amount of it. And I'm sitting there, and I'm coming back, and my friends on the right are probably going to crucify me in comments for some of this stuff. But ask yourself a serious effing question, because how did we do anything anywhere? We had to bring sides together. They had to compromise. Like you said, they always walked away unhappy. Right. But in the end, that's how you get stuff done. And I watch news on both sides. I don't trust any of it anymore. I'm freaking. Quite honestly, I can't stand CNN or Fox. But the thing is it seems like when I watch the news today, what I'm really watching is the grown-up version of teenage high school drama or something. It's just all you're hearing is just enough that's supposed to piss you off at the and I don't know,
because anger is motivating and it gets out the vote. Look at all the votes that came out
in the local. But is it a spiral? Is it gonna? Where does it? I get it ends up getting people to vote, but what is the end game?
Here's the end game, because when you look at the Russians, right? and the Russians' interference in the last election. And what were they doing on social media? They were
Stirring the
trolling.
pot.
They were on both sides.
It was trolling.
They on both sides of the big social issues. They were doing the let's
But
piss
why did
everybody.
we have enough of that stuff going on with us?
Well, because
why was the Russians relevant?
it'll destroy our country.
Right.
Now, I have no idea why the Russians would want this country. It's like in my custody cases, I tell my moms, let them have those kids. Let them do that laundry. But you know, I mean, it will ultimately destroy the country. And remember, when was this country the strongest? In the 50s or in the early 20th century.
Well, the post World War II.
Post World War I and World War II, when we were our strongest, because we weren't Republicans and we weren't Democrats, we were Americans.
Yeah.
You know, and that is.
And now we only see that when there's a great tragedy. We only see people really coming, like, you know, I remember right after 9/11, everybody was.
Oh.
It was great, you know, for like
We
a
were
minute.
Americans.
And then we went to Iraq and everything fell apart. You know,
Well,
I mean,
a
as
lot
far as
of-
the public opinion, it was like as soon as we, you know, and at that time it was, of course, going to change gears, not change gears, but get a random for a second. I don't know if you guys seen what I posted, but it was kind of a cool thing with Michelle Obama and George George W. Bush. Did you see that? Anyway, I didn't really, and this was a legit. I thought it was fake news at first. I had to research it to find out it was legitimate. And they're really good friends. You know,
Oh,
Michelle
yeah.
Obama and George W.
Really
Bush are
good
really good
friends.
friends. But it's just I don't think, when I say compromise, I don't think that people need to compromise in their beliefs, but I think we have to compromise in our actions. I mean, sometimes, I
understand what you're saying. That,
Yeah.
it's not fun to watch the sausage be made in the swamp in Washington, where there's a lot of horse
Right.
trading going on.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? And that's where that's what I think ultimately produced Trump in this last go round.
right.
Because I think that right now on your side, you guys are having the equivalent of the Tea Party revolution that happened to the right just a while
Oh.
ago. The progressives are your Tea Party, and they are demanding that the elder statesmen, in the Democratic Party, the more centrist ones, the Nancy Pelosi's, they're demanding that they come to the left. Really loudly.
And you say that, and I am a member of the Democratic Party, and I'm a member of the Democratic Committee, but
I don't mean on the local level. I just mean on the national level. If you watched all the midterms and you saw how many, well, look at Elizabeth Warren. She's tracking to the left because of Bernie Sanders, who's tracking to the left. And
I guess I guess it goes
You're a
back.
centrist.
It goes back to my Republican roots.
Yeah.
Because I am a centrist. I mean, I love Bernie Sanders. I love his ideas. I'm all about universal health care.
See, yeah.
See,
And I'm not.
yeah, we'll have that conversation someday.
We can have it right now.
God.
We can have it all day long.
Greg, you ignorant slut.
Yeah.
No, I haven't seen anybody. Well, I don't want to get you off track. We'll come back to
But
it.
but I think I would have voted for McCain. I loved McCain.
Right.
He was a centrist. The new senator with the eye patch. He is obviously a centrist. Look at the way he handled that. What was his
is he a
name? I
senator
loved
or-
him.
or House
Is
of
he a
Representatives?
senator?
He is, I believe he's a congressman.
Congressman?
And I could be wrong on
From
that, but I
Texas.
believe he's a congressman, and his name is Dan Crenshaw, and he's a retired. Well, I don't know if he's medically retired, but he was lieutenant
Probably
commander in the
medically.
SEALs. Yeah, he was
Yeah.
lieutenant commander in the SEALs. No, I'm sure he's medically retired with the eye, but I mean I could be wrong. But he was a SEAL, lieutenant commander in the Navy, and I believe he's a congressman out of, I'm not sure.
Texas.
Is it Texas?
Yeah.
Okay. I get him
Yeah.
and Rob O'Neill mixed up because Rob O'Neill is the SEAL that killed, and he's Bin Laden. He's from Montana, so I always get
Right.
their states. I was looking at last night. I was thinking about this, and I was trying to. My issue with presidents, and I don't even know if it's this is coming from someone who really most of the time is never accused of knowing what he's talking about. But I was trying to determine Republicans, conservatives, and Democrats as far as government, okay, size of government. So you guys
Right.
enlighten me on this. We always talk about as conservatives. We always talk about it's big government versus little government. And I started thinking, and I was like, okay, well, when has the government been the biggest and when has it been the smallest under which presidents? And I'm talking about federal government.
Right.
And I stumbled on this thing, and I don't know, and I didn't research it, so I don't want to put out fake news. But the way I looked at the graph and what I understood, because I honestly thought, and I've said this to several people, I said, I thought that George W. Bush probably enlarged the size of the government as much as or more than anyone. And, I remember thinking this and I didn't know. So I looked it up. And according to the graph I looked at, and I'll have to pull it up. Maybe I can find it here in a second. But when you got to Reagan, it went up here.
High.
And then, and I don't remember exactly where everyone else fell into it, but I do remember Reagan, it went high. And actually, the biggest drop in the size of the federal government, and if I understood the graph correctly, only the federal government, not state governments, and civilian employees, obviously, not the military. We're not counting the military. The biggest drop the size of the federal government was under Bill Clinton.
Right.
And then George W. Bush came in and he went right back up to the size that it was when Bill Clinton got there.
Right.
And he left it about the same place that Bill Clinton when he left it. So he didn't really do anything. He kind of like he played with it, went up and then come back. And it didn't go any further than that. So I haven't seen where it is right now.
But and I don't know if anybody remembers, but Clinton's big deal when he ran, and I think why he was elected, and probably why everybody is okay with Trump right now, is that Clinton's big thing was it's the deficit dummy, and because our deficit was so high, and he would argue about, every house has to balance their own checkbook. Why aren't we balancing our checkbook? Because,
and by the way, that was a bit of a bipartisanship. You remember Newt Gingrich was in on that too. They were agreeing with each other. I know you don't like the guy, but I'm just saying that.
No, I don't think Newt Gingrich.
So were you looking in terms of government employees?
Okay, the graph I looked at, it was a bar graph and it showed all the presidents. And then it said, and I'll find a second.
And it
I know
could be the debt.
It was talking about. It said the civilian federal government. Okay, basically bureaucratic agencies, the physical size of them, and it just basically kind of showed it was a wave thing. It showed basically civilian employees by the federal government, the highest numbers and the lowest numbers. That's the way I understood it. And it wasn't Forbes. It was where's my phone?
I'm looking at Forbes numbers, but sometimes it's hard to
I googled what I originally googled to get it was size of the governments under federal government under presidents. That's what I googled, and it come up with this. And then the argument was that somebody had said something like that it wasn't accurate because of it didn't consider all governments, state governments.
Right.
And the guys, the article's counter argument to that was, well, the president doesn't have that much control over state governments. But if you want to do that, then they put that on it too, and it was still relatively about the same thing.
Well, what happens a lot of times?
How good it was.
What happens a lot of times is when the federal government pulls back and stops spending, then the states have to pick up the slack. Right. And so then you've got all these states going, wait, we can't do that.
Size of federal government under presidents, I think, is something to the size of federal government.
Truthful politics. Am I gonna trust that site? No. If you gotta say you're truthful, chances are you're not.
Okay, so it was something like here's some images, but I don't know if this is going to be the one that. I hit all, and there was an article specifically.
Popped up with the Constitution. Hey, speaking of the Constitution, do you know that John Frank Gibson, now that we're online and we're local, John Frank made me read the Constitution and research the clause that's exactly right, that limits or that makes only the federal government can deal with navigable waters. And then he said, oh, never mind. I'm like, John Frank, I researched that for 3 hours. You know what I found was interesting? That after World War II, I think by 1960, World War II was paid off.
Really?
Yeah, it was paid off. And I don't know what we're ever going to do with our poor kids, our grandkids.
Well,
I keep popping up with the Constitution of the United States.
I'll have to get back. I can't remember. I know at my phone it would be on my search history.
One of the things that you guys might want to do some research on is the growth of the administrative state, which is a very, very dangerous aspect of the growth of the federal government that people don't really think about. So the administrative state are those employees that work for all of these agencies that are ostensibly, say, under the executive branch of the government. And to a lesser extent under the Congress and Senate. But these are people who are unelected. And so I explain this to my students sometimes. Imagine that you're a junior congressman. You just got elected to go to Washington. You arrive. The people that are handling you when you get there aren't only just other representatives. They're the bureaucracy. They're the people who are sort of permanently employed by representatives as they come in and out of office. You know what I mean?
Right.
So the new guy comes in, the retiring senator says, hey, look, I've got a great chief of staff. You should probably keep her on. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so these people work for years and years and years, and they make really, really good money. Now, so when people talk about term limits, I've always argued we don't need term limits. Term limits are called the election. If you really want to get rid of somebody that's been representing you that you don't want, then you need to get people to come out and vote that person out of office. That's a term limit. And I'm not talking about presidents here, but because if you have a bunch of unexperienced congressmen, right, who are term limited out, then after a while, the people who are really running the show up there are members of the administrative state.
Okay.
Because they know the ropes. They're the ones that know how things work. And they're the ones that are, so they're cajoling our representatives to act in certain ways. Do you see what I mean? And so they can have a profound impact on, because for instance, Congress, for a long time now, Congress has abdicated its responsibility for seeing that the laws are, that the president's job is to see that the laws are faithfully executed.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
And the way it often happens is when the laws are those that are under the auspices of one of the cabinet positions in the executive branch, then these memos get written to the federal agencies when a new law is imposed, telling them how they're supposed to enforce the law. Well, guess who's writing these memos? The lobbyists that wrote the legislation for the Congress in the first place.
Okay, so the lobbyists are telling
the lobbyists are writing the
executive branch how to
legislation,
enforce the laws.
right? Getting Congress to pass it.
Wow.
So the Congress aren't even writing their own laws. I'm not saying this happens in every case, but you know what I'm talking about, right?
Here's the deal. This is the thing when I think about writing laws, and I've never been involved in it, and I've never seen it. Did page for the Michigan Senate in college, but I just ran errands. The thing that gets me about writing those laws is you've got to have those bureaucrats in the background. Let's say your congressman comes to you and says, I want to pass this law. Great idea. You can't just write a law.
Yeah.
You've got to go back and research all the other laws to make sure this law isn't
in conflict with that one,
isn't in conflict with another
How hard
one.
is that shit?
Can you imagine? I have no idea.
I'm not saying that of course they're necessary. But for instance, when you've got these lobbyists writing the memos that are instructing federal employees about how they're supposed to interpret laws, then you've got an extra layer of sort of lawmaking that's going on there.
Yeah.
And in many cases, what we found is that the instructions don't actually fit what the legislation said in the first place.
Yeah.
But we don't find out about that until something bad happens.
And then, until it's passed.
And then somebody goes back and says, wait a minute, this
is what this statute says, and
Right.
this is what this law is going to do. And then 5 years later, you go, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Plugging stuff in. What do they do when the bills go to committee and they get to tag on things that have absolutely
nothing to
no
do.
relevance with it? That should be outlawed.
Yeah.
I think that lobbyists have a.
And I'm saying this because
let's
not because.
talk about that U.S. Supreme Court case, Citizens United. Oh, what do you guys think?
About?
Come on, what do you think?
Give our viewers a
viewers,
synopsis.
Because our viewers don't know.
All right, here's Citizens United. Probably,
them.
I don't know, maybe 8 years ago, maybe 10 years ago.
I'm going to look it up for us.
The United States Supreme Court, and essentially this is my really thumbnail understanding of it. The United States Supreme Court, somebody sued a statewide or a federal electoral college, saying that our campaign finance laws violated their constitutional rights, because they should be able to donate money without anyone knowing who donated it.
Anonymously.
And there we get into all of our PAC money, right? PAC money. And so that all of our...
It's even funnier than this.
What?
The Citizens United was a conservative, not-for-profit organization that sought to air a film critical of Hillary Clinton and to advertise the film during television broadcasts shortly before the 2008 Democratic primaries.
Right.
And in which Clinton was running for the president. Federal law, however, prohibited any corporation or labor union from making an electioneering communication, right?
Right.
Defined as a broadcast ad reaching 50,000 people or more.
Right.
Okay. Within 30 days of a primary or 60 days of an election.
Right.
And so they sued, saying that rule, that FEC rule, was unconstitutional.
Right. It violated.
Right.
I don't know which. I
That's
think
just the Wikipedia synopsis.
Well, yeah, but it violated their right to free speech
Right.
or to, but the thing, our Constitution can typically be enforced keeping in mind the police state. One of the
Yeah.
things that we have to do is have a safe country for people to live in, and police powers have to be reasonably designed to protect a certain important public interest. And so here we go. With our campaign finance laws, when you run and you take money, unless you're running for a judicial office and then you have a finance person who fills it all out, but everybody else has to report who donates.
By
to
the
them.
way, that was preserved in the Supreme Court's. That part was preserved.
In the Citizens United,
Yep.
that judges
It says the court upheld the requirements, however, for public disclosure by sponsors of the advertisement. So, or maybe they're talking about.
public disclosure of the sponsors. And so, but who's Citizens United? You guys, we just had it in this state with our Supreme Court Justice nominee. Come on, it must be getting late because my brain is shot. Our Supreme Court Justice.
Hold on.
In Arkansas.
That's when we got these
The
magical-
female- female one?
The female.
Yeah,
Oh, and I really supported her.
and her husband's on the board of trustees for the university system,
Right, and
and he's an attorney too.
yeah. Come on.
I'm on it.
But
Arkansas.
the dark money in that race, what was
Yeah.
her name?
This is Arkansas Supreme Court.
Yeah,
nominee?
and if she ever sees this, she's going to be mad, but I really supported her on my Facebook page.
Courtney
Courtney
Gibson.
Court-
Not Goodson. Sorry.
Goodson.
Courtney Goodson.
Courtney Goodson. We would get these ads on TV about her taking this $50,000
Right.
mystery yacht. Well, if you grew up where I grew up,
Yeah.
getting on someone's $400,000 or $500,000 yacht was not
Normal.
outrageous.
It was just a normal day at the park.
Normal day, but the way they did it. And so it would always say, this is paid for by,
Right.
and so I'd start Googling I can't remember who it was, but it was a group in Virginia, and you couldn't find out who their contributors were, and you couldn't find out who was backing them. We're electing people.
Yeah.
We need to be able to understand where the source of that information is coming from in order to determine whether or not we're going to trust it.
Right.
And I think that that's a real important public policy.
However,
and so it's not much of an infringement on your freedom of speech.
It's funny too because studies have also shown that they can't find a correlation between like winning political races and those kinds of ads.
And the
You know
kind of
what I mean?
money. Well, I loved that she won, and
Right.
I loved that
mean, look
I
at-
think that they spent
look at-
probably somewhere between $5 and $10 million.
Well, look at the money that was
Trying-
raised by Beto O'Rourke in Texas in his run against Ted Cruz.
Well, it was
The
an
most
incumbent.
expensive.
Incumbent.
No, I know. The most expensive Senate race in in
Right.
history, and all that money for Beto did not come from Texas. It came from California.
Well,
and it did.
But it came from
So we-
individual donors, and you could see who they
Well,
were.
but you know that there was a PAC set up that bundled
I don't know
money.
that. I don't know that.
No, but I mean, if you look
I mean,
into
I
it,
don't.
I'm just making the
Right.
point that we like dark money when it's coming to us, and we don't call it dark money when it's coming to
Well,
us,
that's
but
right.
it's called dark money when it's going to the other guy.
Well, and my big joke is always, I like the old boy network when it's working for me.
Yeah.
When it's working against me, not
Then
so
I'm
much.
not- I'm
no,
not.
but I think And I don't know on Beto O'Rourke. I love him because he's everything. He's Hispanic, he's Irish, he's got to be Catholic.
I don't think he's Hispanic. I think he's just Irish.
Where's the Beto coming from?
It's just short for, they call it, his name's Robert.
Oh, okay.
So you got a Hispanic guy who goes by Ted instead of Raphael, because his first name is Raphael.
Right.
And then you have a non-Hispanic guy that goes by Beto, and that sounds, especially in Texas, because I lived in Texas for a long time, that sounds Hispanic.
Oh, yeah.
So I thought that was
But
really fun.
I thought that O'Rourke, most of his money came from the small online donors.
I believe
$25
that's
off
true.
my debit.
I think he was a really good fundraiser, and he attracted a lot of national. It's not the last we're going to hear from him.
But you can't tell me if you're spending millions of dollars on political campaigns that you don't catch myself crying. And then my husband came in saying, something's wrong with me, something's wrong with me. I'm going to go to the doctor. I'm really depressed. Something's wrong with me. And I went, no. We're just coming down off the adrenaline.
Yeah.
Because while you guys were there, our adrenaline levels were up. There was one day that I called Rodriguez, was the sergeant that they kept in Warren.
Yeah.
And I called over one day, and some poor little private answered the phone, and I went, "Where's Sergeant Rodriguez? He's not in, ma'am. Has he been called in?" "No, ma'am, thank you," because there had been murders, there had been something happen, and I remember walking past Rodriguez saying, "Don't you dare darken my door."
Yeah.
We had
Because it would have been his
It was
responsibility.
his responsibility to notify families.
I'm not going to mention any names or news organizations, okay? And I hope I don't screw this up. But we had one of our guys who was hurt in the initial invasion. He had a pretty bad injury. He's fine now, but he had a pretty bad injury, and the news circulating back was, hectic at best. You had a family support representative back, and I remember his name, it was Staff Sergeant Ford, and he was responsible for letting the families know what was going on.
Right.
And 3rd Battalion 2nd Marines hadn't had any. Well, they had one killed. Actually, in a vehicle accident on the way there. You're driving for hours and days. Anyway, it's just ridiculous. But that he was killed in a vehicle accident, and then this other Marine who later on was wounded. He stepped on an explosive type of device that was small, but anyway, it was a foot injury. But somehow the fact that he was a casualty got switched with that was killed in action.
Oh.
Now watch this. This is crazy. So he was asked if when he was wounded if they wanted to notify the family service rep, and the family service rep to notify his family. And he was on his way out. He was on his way to Germany, right? And he said, "Well, did they know already?" And they said, "No." And he said, "Well, then I'll just call them when I get to Germany."
Oh.
You can see where this is going, right?
Oh.
One of the worst stories possible.
No.
So anyway, on a certain news organization doing what they were doing, somehow his name winded up on the fallen roster.
Right.
Oh.
And his family saw it, and they hadn't heard anything. Now, this was not the Marine Corps' fault at all. It had nothing. The Marine Corps had not messed this up. No one had messed this up. But it somehow got messed up in the news process, and his name was on this news. They had no association with the Marine Corps whatsoever. So his mother and father see this, and of course it crushes them, and they haven't heard anything. So they call the headquarters, and they talk to the family support rep, and and he didn't want to say no because he didn't know. Like, he was just like, what?
Right.
All
right.
So anyway, he finds out that he's getting. You have to understand, back in these days, communication, peacetime or war, was not very good. You could never trust anything going up and down. It was always something was always messed up.
Right.
And you would hear something verified 2 or 3 times that turned out not to be true. This is the same in news today, right?
Exactly.
I was dead for 3 days.
No way.
Yes
I
way.
was for one.
Well, he anyway, so he found out that this wasn't the case, or he didn't believe it was the case, but he couldn't go back and tell the family that because he didn't want to get their hopes up and then find out that he was actually wrong.
No, he needed to be 100% absolutely.
Well, or call him back and say, "We're not sure. We're getting misinformation. Don't."
And I don't know
worst
exactly what he said. He might have done that.
Yeah.
But in essence, it was several days later to where this Marine calls his family and they find out that he's perfectly fine. And he's not perfectly fine. He was wounded, but anyway, so that's
God,
just.
can you imagine?
What? Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Yeah. It was.
When I went to college at the University of Missouri, my dad drove me, and I can't remember. My mom got a call saying that I had been involved in a horrible car accident, and so for like a 24-hour period, a friend of mine told me later, like we thought you were dead, and it turned out that it was another kid that went to my high school whose name was Greg Borchard.
Oh, yeah.
Pray for him, that it was actually him.
Yeah.
But I was on the road for, we were driving 1,000 miles to get to the University of Missouri.
Yeah,
we're completely out of pocket,
have
so
cell
it wasn't
phones.
like my mom could call. Like she had to wait.
Yeah.
She's like, no, he's on his way to college with his dad. I don't think that could possibly be him. But until she heard my voice again, when
we
I called,
always had a rule that bad news travels fast.
Yeah.
I mean, and you will get an official call.
What's your story?
I am in college, and I hadn't gotten my check from my GI Bill 1 month. And so I'm into my next month, and I call home, I call my roommate, and I say, Ann, have you checked the mail? Is my check in there? Because we used to get paper checks.
Yeah.
And she said, no, but there's the funniest thing. And I said, what's that? And she said, well, it's a postcard addressed to your next of kin. They want to know when and where you died. And I went, no, not funny. They don't issue checks to dead people.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I had to call my congressman and say, hey, I'm really not dead. I got to pay tuition. Please get me my check. And they had my check in a couple of days. It wasn't bad, but it was pretty funny. I was dead for 3 days.
Well, that's,
There you go.
Hey, something
Speaking of Grosse Pointe, there
you
we
go.
go. Hometown in the Winter. Have you ever seen the movie Grosse Pointe Blank?
love that movie.
Watch it. I swore Tom McGillen, a friend of mine from high school, wrote it, but he said no, he wished.
Really?
wish.
Whoever wrote it was not from Grosse Pointe.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
But they captured the
Yeah.
absurdity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's what that movie was about.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
captured the absurdity. It was
Yeah,
great.
my wife lived in Grosse Pointe. Her dad was able to. He was a lawyer, died early,
Mm-hmm.
but he was able to make enough money as an attorney to buy a little duplex.
Duplex.
Right
Yep.
on the edge,
Right on the edge.
right near
Yep.
that neighborhood. There's
Yep.
and the first time I ever went to meet Sheila's mom and her brothers and her sister was at Christmas time, and we were all up late playing cards and stuff and running out of beer, and so the guys were like, we need to go get some more beer, and I said I'll go. Where is it? And they're like, actually, if you go down the street and take a left and go through the gates, there's a liquor store right there. Just go to that one. That was the scariest trip I ever made to a
because
Remind me to
you
tell you
went-
my
in my
scary story.
You went across the border.
I did. I went right into Detroit. I mean, not even 150 feet.
I know.
And there are two Grosse Pointe patrol cars
They're
pointed
right.
toward Detroit, right there at that entrance. I had to drive past them, park, and I go into this. Everything's bulletproof. There are some shady
Right.
characters
Oh,
out in
yeah.
the parking lot. I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I am so gonna get
Well,
jumped.
see, now listen,
know?
but I remember as a kid, that whole area on Jefferson
Yeah.
burned.
Yeah.
Burned during the riots.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
talk about a funny beer story. Scariest beer story I have is we were getting ready to rotate. I was contracted. We were getting ready to rotate out of Iraq. So I was in Basra, which is I've told people before, it's close to the Iranian border. I worked out of a regional embassy office. Actually friends with one of the ladies, one of the diplomats that protected. I'm actually friends on Facebook with her. Posted something the other day. If you look at my personal page with my T-shirt, anyway, me and her talked about that for a minute. But anyway, we were getting to rotate out. We did like 3 months in country and 1 month home, and I think it was my first. I think it was my first trip back home. I'd been there like 3 months, and we were okay. So the guys try to understand. The compound that we were in was it actually belonged to. We were in Shia territory. We were in southern Iraq.
Right.
Not Saddam Hussein was really a secularist. I don't know if he was. By I wouldn't say by religion, a Sunni or whatever, but that's just where he was from. So
he was
he was
a
Baptist
Baptist,
party,
and
right?
that was a political
right.
party.
So I don't think that his sons. I could be wrong on this, but I don't think his sons. This palace they visited much because this was in an area that they fought against Iran for a long time. So this wasn't like a popular vacation spot for them. I wouldn't imagine. But we were in the middle of the city at this palace, and a little background on it. Before I got there in 2007. It was called Bazaritaville, and it was, basically everybody wanted to go hang out there. There no activity, there was a pool, and it was just like the place to go. Well, somewhere around 2006, 2007, it just turned to shit. About the time I got there, we were getting mortared daily and rocketed. You couldn't go outside the wire. It was horrible, horrible. But we had been there, and when I say mortared and rocketed daily, I'm literally,
Right.
I mean that. Yeah, it was absolutely. And
I remember it was tough.
Yeah, it was bad. And in fact, if anybody, and I don't know where to find it, but my friend on Facebook, like I said, the lady that I worked for, helped protect over there, she wrote a book, I believe it was a self-published book, and she talks about how at that time it was the most attacked consulate in Iraq. Okay, it was bad. Well, when I got ready to rotate out of there, the compound was divided. There was a British side, there was an American side. And the British side, there was just basically a gate, and there were some Gurkhas. If you don't know what they are, Google them. But anyway, these guys that they were private contractor too, but they were security.
Right.
Anyway, there was a gate that there were several different gates to get into the British side, but they had the liquor store and the store period was all on
Were
their
you
side.
guys allowed to drink over there?
Oh God, yes.
Oh.
I don't know if they're still Blackwater couldn't drink, but we could drink. I don't know how that ended up, if that's still the case or whatever. But actually they closed the consulate. Well, this one they closed when I was there because we had to move out of the city. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So we were getting to rotate out. We're rotate out the next morning. So we were going to get on a plane, a bird the next day, and fly out. And we'd end up in Kuwait and come back. Well, that night we were drinking, and we ran out. And me and maybe I shouldn't say I was drinking.
Yeah.
I wasn't drinking, but my friends were.
Yeah, everybody else, I never touched it.
Yeah, I wasn't. But
well,
anyway,
you didn't inhale at least.
Right, exactly. So
Right.
we got ready to go over to the British side to get some more beer. So we jump in the vehicle and we're heading over. We get to the British side, and I pull up, and there the liquor store was close to the British consulate. And I kind of back in there because in that world you back into everything. You're always ready to take off. And so I'm driving, and my buddy gets out of the vehicle, and he goes to walk across the street to go into the liquor store, and then we hear the incoming. Okay. And this shows you how bad our sicker sense of humor
Well,
was.
you don't have any time if you hear
There
it.
was
It's
no
too
time.
late.
So we heard, and when I talk about the incoming, I'm not talking about the siren. I'm talking about the actual round.
Right.
So we hear it coming, and then I remember my buddy looks back at me. He's halfway across the street, and he looks back at me and I go.
Oh well.
And he makes it in there anyway. So we get a volley of mortars, boom, 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 and it goes on for a little bit, and then the duck and cover is it's over, and they're checking or accounting for everybody, and my buddy comes out of the store and,
with his beer.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I said. He comes out, he jumps in the vehicle, and goes, "Oh man!" And I said, "Where's the beer?" And he says,
Get the beer.
"Well, I didn't get it." And I'm like, "Well, go back."
What do you mean you didn't get it?
Yeah, the
we
border
risked our
attack is
life.
no excuse to go back
We
to the guys
risked our
without the
life
liquor.
for this
Like
beer.
5 more.
Yeah. In fact, we could probably get a really good deal on it right now.
Yeah.
But I actually saw the round hit. It hit, the one we heard, hit down the street. And when it blew, I saw the sparks from it. So I didn't see the explosion, but it hit around a corner. And I saw it like that. And anyway, but yeah, I was like, where's the beer?
Hey, you guys, listen, we've been doing this for 2 hours. I can't imagine anybody wanting to watch this for 2 hours.
Well, we're going to cut it up in segments.
Yeah,
oh,
we
good.
do.
I would have to stick.
Yeah, we're going to edit it. That's another reason why we do record is we're going to edit it in kind of in segments and stuff.
Good.
But really, I mean, honestly, guys, for
I'm
a first session, I think we've done good.
I'm done.
So, man, it's been a great session.
Good.
It's been a great recording, guys. We appreciate you guys checking us out here on Crosswit Talk. We appreciate our guest. Hopefully, we'll have her back again pretty soon.
Thank you, Sarah.
And we'll get into a
Welcome.
lot of
Thanks,
other
it
stuff
was
too.
fun.
Please make sure that you guys go to all our social media platforms again. Go to Podbean, go to Facebook, go to YouTube, and just hit everything. Do the whole subscribe, follow, like,
All right.
comment, all that kind of stuff. We really appreciate it. It helps us out, helps us with numbers, and really keeps us growing. Get the word out, share, let people know who we are, help us get better. Also, the last thing is we have a Facebook group called Crosswitters. If you join that group, you can give us ideas for guests, discussions. You can comment on stuff. We'll respond to it and kind of help us get ideas for future episodes. So I appreciate you again for coming on.
Good, thanks.
And guys, we all appreciate you. We'll see you on the next episode of Crosswit, episode 9 coming up probably sometime next week. Thanks, guys.
So long.
Thanks,
you all
bye. Everybody have a good Thanksgiving.
And that was it.
Good. That was a long. How long did we film?
We usually go about 3 hours.
Really?
Yeah, almost
Oh,
every,
man,
every
two-
time.
Okay.
And we
My butt
never
was
have
numb.
anything scheduled to talk about. We just do
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing we failed to tell you, Sarah, too,
Uh-huh.
is that if at any time during that or
Uh-huh.
a future visit,
Absolutely. And I
like,
think
wasn't that the argument that Trump made against Jeb Bush? Hey, I wrote you checks down in Florida, Jeb. I expected to get my casino. I didn't get it, So how did he get back at him? He ran for president.
Yeah, I can't even. I absolutely, my eyes roll up.
Yeah.
I'm humiliated.
But again, back to the whole Trump thing. I think we got to the point, because this is what we didn't notice when McCain was running against Hillary Clinton the first time, right? Is that or when Hillary was let's see. When Obama was elected the first time, he ran against what's his
McCain.
name? No. He ran. Yeah,
He
beat
did.
McCain.
McCain and Palin.
He ran
Okay,
against
so
McCain and
what
he ran
did
against
what did
Romney.
the American electorate show us culturally in that race? Because Hillary Rodham Clinton was up for the nomination on this side, right?
Right.
And surprisingly lost it to Obama.
I saw
Young.
that coming. I called
Okay.
that.
Young.
Exactly.
I called-
It was young.
The baby boomer candidates lost their primaries.
When we should.
McCain is older than the baby boomers.
Let me-
So he
McCain's
is.
a baby.
No,
No.
he's not a boomer. I looked it up.
How old? Oh, he was 80 when he died.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
He was not a boomer. So the conservatives chose the old guy,
I said that was.
and the Democrats chose I
The
call
young guy, the
Generation
youth.
X. He's the
Yeah,
first
youth.
Generation X president, although technically he's born just a little bit before Gen X supposedly started. And that's and by the way, I told this
I don't
story.
understand anything past baby boomers.
Okay,
there
so
we
let me
go.
explain the Generation X. You guys will like this story. I don't know if I've told you this before. So
I need to write something down. So I got some things I want to.
Oh wait.
You got a pad? Let me.
Here, just.
when I was
I can't get Word working on here for some reason.
Okay.
in
here.
1992,
Here.
Oh, that's
Just
fine.
no. Yeah. Just do notes.
I rode my motorcycle home from the office. Back then, I was working for an orthopedic surgeon's clinic that specialized in spine injury rehab.
Ah.
And I was I was the guy that was making the insurance companies pay their bills. So I was on the business side, right? And
You know, if we took profit out of insurance
we'll get to it.
and universal
No, I don't.
healthcare
I really don't
would
have
pay
a
for
solution
itself.
to that. So anyway, I used to drive my motorcycle home for lunch sometimes because Elizabeth was like 1 or 2 years old. She was 1, and we had a nanny. We were not well off. We paid our nanny more than we paid in rent.
Right.
And I went home one day, and the phone rang, and this is before cell phones became really, really popular, and I didn't have one. But it was a friend of mine, Janelle. She was calling from a PR firm in Dallas, and she said, "Greg, would you be willing to be interviewed by Barbara Walters?" And I said, "Shut up." And she said, "No, I just got a call from our affiliate in Atlanta, and ABC News is looking for somebody." They described who they were looking for, and I said, "That's Greg Boers." So I said, "Look, I got to get back to the office. Here's my number. Have them call me at the office." So when I got back to my office, my phone's blinking. I got a message from a producer from ABC News in New York named Suzanne Goodson, and I call her back, and she says, "Let me explain what we're doing. Barbara Walters wants to do a standalone news special on Generation X. Her daughter is Generation X, and she wants to find out what makes that generation tick." Now, mind you, Time Magazine the year before in '91 had done a cover story on the lost generation. And interestingly enough, as a result of their misunderstanding my own generation, I wrote a letter to the editor that they actually printed, telling them they didn't know what they were talking about. But a book had come out by an author named Copeland called Gen X, and he was the one that coined the name. And I happened to have read that book. So Miss Goodson's asking me these questions about myself. How much money do you make? How much education do you have?
Right.
And at the time, I think I just finished my master's degree.
You were making $10 an hour.
No, I was making $28,000 a year. This is 1990.
I got it.
92.
it.
I'm married. I have a kid, but Sheila and I are a 2-income family, and we're barely
Right.
making ends meet. And that's what
Right.
they were looking for. They wanted
Right.
somebody who was married, had kids, and were having a tough time keeping up with stuff. Bill Clinton's running for the presidency against Perot and HW.
Man, Dustin
Ross
Perot.
Perot.
Yeah. So, and I live in Dallas.
Doesn't he still alive? I'm just.
I don't.
I gotta
know.
look it
think
up. I
he
gotta
is.
know. Go ahead.
But anyway, so after talking to her for about 5 minutes, she says, "Shut up." Or no, she didn't say shut up yet. She says, "You know what? You're not going to work." And I said, "Really?" And she said, "Yeah, you make too much money. You got too much education. Let me tell you what we were looking for." And she reads me this little blurb from a newspaper story about a guy who's working the night shift at the factory.
Right.
His wife is working at,
Right.
at an Easy Mart, and they live in a trailer, and they got
Right.
3 kids. She said, "That's what we're looking for, and you're just not that guy."
Right.
And I said, "Well, you know what? If you change your mind, give me a call." So I'm walking to go get a cup of coffee, and I'm thinking to myself, I just got that close to getting interviewed by Barbara Walters, and I'm going to let it go like that. And I turned right back around, and I called her back. Production assistants answered the phone. She said, "Well, is she taking your call?" And I said, "Look, tell her I still make the same amount of money. I'm still as educated. I still married. I still have a kid. But if she doesn't talk to me, she's not going to know something that she doesn't know about Generation X. That got her back on the phone, but she was pissed, and she was like, "What?" you know?
Yeah.
And I said, "Look, I said I belong." I said I read Copeland's book, and he missed a slice of this generation that he doesn't even know about.
I don't even know who Generation X
Gen
is.
Xers were the anti-yuppies. We were the bourgeois
It's the post-baby
bohemians.
boom.
But let's see, baby boom stopped at like 62, right? Birth
Yeah,
at
and then
62.
63, 64 through,
We're
whatever
merging.
are the Generation X.
I'll look it up.
Through 95, not
Yeah.
90s, not 90s, it's the, maybe to 1990. But, and so I'm right at the I was the oldest one on the show. But, so I'm talking to her again, and I said, look, I belong to a singular group of my generation that are dedicated to
60 to
these
the
kinds
80s.
of things. And at one point she asked me this question.
What's Generation X?
It goes back and forth.
Yeah.
It was like 60 through the 80s.
Okay, all right.
Early 60s, so I kind of count.
Following the baby boomers, basically
Right.
the main
Right.
thing.
So
what was supposed to be significant about them? I know that
Well, that they weren't motivated to do things like the last generation. We weren't yuppies. We weren't conspicuous.
weren't going to save the
Right.
world.
Right.
Were we yuppies? Gen X was the yuppies. I don't think baby boomers
No.
were the
yuppies were the last of the baby boomers because they were the ones that were just ahead of
I was a yuppie.
Yeah. So,
all right?
so yeah,
Not a very
especially in
good
Grosse
one.
Pointe. But
Not a good one,
Did you have
but-
one of those skirts that wrapped around and then had a big baby pin on it?
Absolutely.
Generation,
I have.
So-
They're
Generation
quick kilts. I
Xers
still
yeah,
have
are
6 of them.
currently between the ages roughly of 39 to 53.
Yeah.
That's
so
what it's saying.
so anyway, at one point she asked me this question. You guys are going to love how this all turned out.
Right.
I hope. She said, "Well, what do you think the biggest difference is between you and your father's generation?" And I said, "Look, my grandfather just wanted to do better than the Depression.
Right.
My dad wanted to do as well as his dad did. I
Or
said,
better.
we
We
want
wanted
to
to do
do as
better.
well as our parents, and we don't see it happening." Now, this is the part they didn't
Right.
quote me on. We didn't see it happening. We don't see it happening because we need too much stuff. Right? Like when I was
Right.
growing up, one TV, one car,
Right.
one telephone. Now,
Right.
I'm a Gen Xer. I need a TV in every
gotta have a
room.
tablet, I gotta have a
I gotta-
phone.
Yeah, I got to have
Yeah.
everything. So she said, "You know what?" And this was when she told me to shut up. She asked me another question. I don't remember what it was. And then at one point I'm answering. She says, "You know what? Shut up." And I'm like, "Excuse me?" She's a New Yorker.
Right.
And I said, "Excuse me?" And she said, "I can't write this fast. This
Oh,
is
yeah, you
golden."
talk-
She said,
yeah.
let me go talk to Barbara and I'll call you back." And she called back 15 minutes later and said, "We're booking you a flight to Dallas on Friday morning. We will be taping all day on Saturday."
So Baba Wawa
Yeah.
interviewed you?
Yes.
How cool is that?
So the show was called Generation X: What Happened to the American Dream.
Uh-huh.
And I got flown up there, and they had a type. I filled a slot for them. You know what I mean?
Right.
So they had a young white professional single girl from New York.
Right.
They had a young black male single professional from
Right.
Chicago. They had his white counterpart from Seattle. They had a guy that was working for an ad agency who actually was the guy that created the Energizer Bunny, who worked on Venice Beach and rollerbladed to work every day.
Right.
They had the single mom of 2 boys on welfare living in assisted housing in Cleveland.
Right.
They had the girl that had her master's degree who'd spent 2 years in Tibet trying to find herself. They had me as the married guy with kids that was kind of struggling, but I also had a master's degree, but they downplayed that.
Right.
They did mention it, but they didn't. And so it was a very interesting experience. Barbara Walters was.
Did it show on TV?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so what was it called? Barbara Walters.
It was called Generation X: What Happened to the American Dream.
Okay, I'm trying to look it up.
And it's just old enough that you don't find a lot of stuff on it online because it was before 1995, which is when the internet really started taking off. This was in 92. And no, I didn't get any offers from Hollywood because I was on TV. One guy called me and asked me if I'd be willing to sell water purifiers for him.
Well, I hope you took that opportunity.
So,
I hope you took it.
but
Yeah,
here's
man.
the funny thing
You
about
kidding
that.
me? Barbara Walters interviewed
So
me.
after
Of
the
course
show
I'll sell.
aired, and it was an interview type show, and then they came to Dallas to film at my house. So I have home movies of my daughter Sophia that were filmed by Emmy-winning news filmers. you know.
Aw.
We should
That
look
was
at
pretty
those.
cool. But the whole thing was, talk about fake news. At one point when they're interviewing my wife and I, they really wanted a shot of me and Sheila at the kitchen table pouring over our bills, right? But
Yeah.
while our daughter Elizabeth was asleep in a crib within view of us, and we're like, we usually don't have our daughter sleep in the dining room, and they're like, we really don't, we can't do this at night. So is there a fabric store around here? And there happened to be one just around the corner. They're like, take us to the fabric store. They
They're
bought
gonna create the whole
They-
scene.
Yeah, they bought 2 bolts of black taffeta and festooned them on the outside of my house to make it nighttime inside, and then they blue lit everything. And then they had us fake the
Filter
worrying about
world.
which bills we're going to be able to pay, which was
Right.
kind of true of our life at
Right.
the time.
It's not mine. We just throw them all.
And
in
then
trash.
after the show aired, I got who is the California senator? Is it Inouye?
Oh, that sounds
You've heard that
familiar.
name, right?
Yeah.
So I got a call from their office the day after the show aired. And they said that the senator would like to quote you in a congressional report that he's getting ready to issue.
Oh.
And I said, are you kidding me? What is this, some kind of a political action committee? She goes, no. I am the aide, to Senator Inouye. And they just did a study of men's wages in the United States from 1940 to 1990. And he saw you on that Barbara Walters special last night, and he really liked something that you said, and he wanted to quote you. And I said, will you send me a copy of the report? She said, absolutely. Let me get your information. So I got the report in the mail, and you open it up, and on the title page, there's the title, Men at Work, Men's Wages in the United States from 1940 to 1990. And
break my heart.
I know.
Let's not talk about men and wages.
Well, but the thing is, then there's a quote from me.
I don't know. I like the tone of that. Let's talk about
And
it.
then, no, but then there's a quote from me that I told you about. My grandfather's generation just wanted to do better than the Depression.
Yeah.
So there's a quote from me.
Yeah.
And then there's a quote from frickin' Alan Greenspan under it. And then the
says-
report begins. So I got billing over Greenspan in a congressional report.
I'm getting some questions, so I'm going to have to.
Oh,
yeah,
we're on Facebook.
Well,
Good, let's
yeah,
go.
I got some people sending questions. So they
right.
want to know what is our takes on the Jim Acosta, and I know I'm trying to get to
The Jim Acosta
the Jim
deal?
Acosta scene. So I'm going to go ahead and give you. I watched it. What you're talking about, in case you don't know,
I don't know.
Jim Acosta's got kicked out of the
He's
White
had
House.
his pass restored, by the way.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, now I got
it. They sued. CNN sued the
Right.
White House to
And,
get out.
but a federal judge said that the White House should have they have processes and procedures for revoking the pass, and the White House did not follow those rules, so it has to be restored.
Okay, so what had happened was,
Yeah,
right
I saw it. I know.
right?
what
Yeah,
you're
right
talking
after
about.
I'm just telling them. Right after the election, or after the midterm elections, he held a press brief, and in the press brief, people were asking questions, and Jim Acosta got up, and there's something interesting that I want to bring up about this. He got up and he asked questions, and basically his question was framed towards the migrant caravan.
Right.
And he was pushing Trump to say, hey, why are you calling this an invasion? They're just migrants, and Trump said it's an invasion because of this. And I'm not going to, the whatever. The point was, he didn't shut up when he was told to shut up, which is funny to me. Shut up. But anyway, he didn't relinquish the mic when he was supposed to. And then this is where it gets weird. The intern comes up to him to take the mic. Now, this is really cool because I watched a British film guy do something interesting last night. All right, and so he went to take the mic, and I remember. Look, I'm not defending Jim Acosta. I think he's an asshole. I think he's.
I really like him. He's not an asshole.
Well,
don't
she
get
likes
me.
him.
Don't get me started with who's an asshole.
I don't like him, but I think.
Oh,
but,
Jesus.
But anyway,
You know what?
Hold on.
She likes assholes.
Yeah.
She's
No.
here.
Oh,
Well, maybe I should.
I rest my case.
But I'm going to defend him. Okay, I don't like him, but to show you I'm fair and balanced, I'm going to defend him. And whenever I think he should have shut up
I'm
and handed
sorry.
the mic over.
That just registered
You just
what
registered?
you just said.
So anyway, whenever she went to take the mic, he wouldn't let her take it in his hand, kind
His
of like
other hand.
Well, yeah, and it
came
wasn't
down.
okay. Now, but watch this. I watched the video, and the first time I watched it, because they said he assaulted her, so I'm like, oh, I want to see this.
Right,
So I watched it. I'm going,
Huh?
and I'm waiting for it. It never happened. And
Right.
then I see what they're talking about, and I'm going, what? Are you
Are you
kidding me?
right?
So then, so I'm looking.
Stop
trust me,
lying
I
to
missed
us.
something. Well, watch this. There is a video that was circulating, and I don't know where the origins of it was. I can't remember. But
I do.
There was a
Sanders.
you know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
So
They sped it up to make it look like.
well, actually, I think they slowed it down to make. Okay, so what it is, and correct me if I'm wrong. You can look it up right now. But I watched the British film guide. He put an original video and the one that was circulating, and he put them on a timestamp, like on a frame where you could follow it.
Right.
And there is a point to where if I got this right, the original video gets behind or gets ahead of the doctored video, and the implication is that right about the time the hand goes down, that there was like almost maybe a pause to make it look like there was an impact that pushed
Right.
along. And then, so I mean, if you watch the two videos, number one, it's an absolute fact that at some point that there's a difference in time, because you can even look at the other things going around it, and
Right.
they're exactly the same. And then one of them gets ahead of the other one, and it's
Right.
just at that point.
At
All right,
that
so
junction.
wait, before we go down that rabbit hole,
Well,
Fake
I
news.
didn't go down the rabbit hole before, but I didn't go the rabbit hole before we
I want
started.
to ask
so.
you. You told me
I
something
kind of
about
like rabbit holes.
I know, but Casey said something about our the quality of the HD that we had on YouTube or on Facebook Live for our own podcast. Remember you were talking about that? You said we tried to switch to make it a sharper image.
Yeah, well, no, we were just trying to upgrade it from like.
Oh,
from
so
420
you're
to
saying
1080p.
that's what they were doing with the
I'm
doctored video?
I'm telling you
Oh.
what the White House said.
Oh.
When they got
Oh.
accused.
Right.
Oh, so they got
Sanders-
they got accused.
Yeah,
Oh,
they got accused
yeah.
of doctoring it, and Sarah Sanders said it was not doctored, but all we did was upload it to Twitter, and when you upload it to Twitter, it's automatically turned into a GIF.
Okay.
And so,
Oh.
Well, it was from a
and-
Twitter
and
account.
people so when that happens, it automatically messes up the timing of the video from the original.
Okay. So
it's just so they said we didn't change it.
But
we
then
just
why
uploaded
didn't it? Wait. Why did the time frame only change at the exact moment that the
You'd have to
arm
look it up,
chop
and I
came
looked it up,
down?
and I was like, "That sounds right," because people run into this all the
And
time.
my
when it
mom
gets-
thought Hillary was a lesbian, so there you go.
There you go. But the other thing is,
I don't know.
Has
I
anybody asked the intern if Acosta? It's clear that he jerks.
She didn't look like.
She looked a little shocked.
Look,
in the
here's
video.
my point. Here's my point. Okay, I think there's plenty of things that you can criticize a dude on, but I don't think you need to throw that he hit a girl that he didn't hit. You know?
Right.
And that's
right.
my opinion. Like, okay, I don't like the guy. We just had this conversation. So I got no reason to defend him.
Yeah.
But I'm
Right.
just saying, I watched that and I'm going, obviously your version of striking somebody and my version of striking someone are completely different.
And look,
because that was like.
There are people in the media talking about this right now, but they're not talking about it publicly. I've seen.
Well, the
You
issue
guys,
is.
let me tell you, I think the bottom line is that we ought to demand honesty from our political advisors.
Yeah.
We ought to demand honesty and forthrightness. Although sometimes I've caught myself going, yeah, but when it was
But
in
the
my
other thing you
favor.
need to
So-
understand about the press briefings is that there is a protocol in the press
Oh,
briefings.
I
And
believe that 100%.
The protocol is this.
Yeah, we
when
said
you
this
get-
before.
When you get to
Yeah.
when you get called on, you get to ask a question,
And he wouldn't
then,
shut up.
and then a follow up, and then perhaps a second question.
Yeah, yeah.
Acosta was breaching the protocols and hogging the mic from other people in the media.
Yeah.
And there are people in the media that are quietly talking about that.
Yeah.
They're saying Acosta is a gas bag who is trying to get his own show on CNN, and he's turning these press briefings into the Jim Acosta show, and they're kind of pissed off at him about it.
Yeah.
And I would agree. I don't think he assaulted her.
No, I
think
don't
that
at all.
language is wrong. Let me give you another
I just think
case.
he's like, I agree with you. I think he's trying to do like every other correspondent that's trying to get their own show.
Let me give you another case that happened
Buddy,
right
you can
before
just
the
get a YouTube
midterm.
channel. I got one right here.
Right.
I got 3 subscribers.
So
we got a YouTube channel?
Oh yeah, this is going on our YouTube.
Yeah.
channel.
Are we on YouTube
Not
now?
right now.
Oh,
But
okay.
But we could
Look.
be live. I didn't
All
think
right.
about that. Anyway, go ahead.
All right, get this one, and maybe people will be surprised that I reacted to this one this way. A reporter up in Michigan called the Republican senator candidate, right, for Michigan, a guy named John James. She left him a voicemail message, and I listened to it, and she said, "Hi, my name is such and thus. I'm from this paper. I'd like to schedule an interview with you for Wednesday after the election for your reaction to how the election went.
Okay.
So I'll probably send you a follow-up email. But in the meantime, here's my number. Please give me a call if you have a chance." Very
Yeah.
polite, very nice, right?
Okay.
Now this is the Republican candidate.
Right.
She thinks she hangs up her phone, but she doesn't.
Oh,
and so the next
my
thing,
mother-in-law did that to me
So
once.
so the next thing you
Ew.
hear her say is, "If this guy beats her, Jesus Christ, we're fucked," or something like that.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
of course, what does the Republican campaign do? They get that out on, they get it out. See, we can't hope to get fair coverage from these reporters that are, against
Are
us.
so-
They're so biased, fake news, all
And
that
you know
stuff,
what?
right?
I agree with that.
No, I do too. But
I do.
But let me tell you the rest of the story. She was fired from the paper the next day. And when I heard that she was fired, and they issued a statement that said that kind of behavior does not reflect our values, blah, 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 right?
Right.
Okay, look, if you're a journalist, it doesn't mean that you're not allowed to have opinions. It doesn't mean that you're not allowed to vote. What they should have done at that newspaper is they should have gone back and looked at her coverage to see if her coverage was biased.
Right.
And if the answer to that question was no, you don't fire her. You apologize, she apologizes, and everybody moves on. But you don't just
Fire someone.
you just because we're getting to the point in the Me Too movement that an accusation has been so weaponized that everybody's just losing their jobs. And talk about due process.
Listen, I agree with you guys on that. I agree with what I love about the Me Too movement is that every important man in my life, every man that I love with my whole heart in my life, has at some point come to me and gone, I've been thinking about it.
Yeah.
Did I ever do anything?
Yeah.
And the ones that are in my generation or above are going, of course I did.
Yeah.
I was a red American, red-blooded American boy. But the ones younger are like, nope, haven't done it. I'm proud to say I have, I've not ever accosted women.
Right.
I really used to have a lot of fun being sexually harassed. It was because I'm not the typical mousy little woman.
Yeah.
Oh man, I had some fun with a cook in a restaurant in college. So much fun, I'll tell you that story.
But you're seeing cases where people are losing their jobs from it's getting out that an accusation had been made against them in the past that was never prosecuted. Where you know what I mean, where the authorities where a crime was reported and it was either declined or it was found not to have whatever, right? And these people are still losing their jobs.
Well, here's where your issue lies, and I'm so glad you're a professor and we're talking about it. Here's where your issue lies, is that, a crime, you've got to reach your burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, right? But the civil liability for sexual harassment is more likely than not,
Right.
preponderance of the evidence. So if you are an employer and someone comes to you and reports that, this guy may be, and let me tell you something, there are assholes in the world, and the shit that women have to put up with is incredible. And we have all, at least in my, baby boomers, baby boomer women have all just sat around and gone, oh, it's just a fact of life. We have to learn how to deal with it, and we have to learn how to face it.
And by the way, that's what I think is important about the Me Too movement culturally, is women standing up. Because I have a theory about why it started when it did. Women standing up finally and saying, we should not have to tolerate this anymore.
Because if you watch women in movies now, what are they in movies, man? They are warriors. It's not.
We actually talked about this on our first with Greg Fallon. We talked about, or maybe the one before, where when that started with the woman hero. I can't remember the one. I know I used the Alien movie franchise as it was a soul. Well, I think Halloween.
Yeah.
Was it not Halloween?
Oh yeah. Jamie Lee Curtis. Halloween is a cultural moment in film. Because what that movie did is it reversed the damsel in distress formula, and it made her be the smart one that had to rely on her own strength and courage to save herself, and so that became sort of a motif in the slasher film. Now they were still morality plays, but it was an important moment, and so it's the beginning of something. But now I think it's finally coming sort of to fruition. But my theory about why it started when it did is because Ashley Judd gave a really, really fiery speech.
Oh, good God, it was...
Right?
I'm listening.
I remember at the protest against Trump's inauguration.
I didn't hear the whole thing.
Okay, but Ashley Judd, and there were people on both, I thought it was ridiculous.
She did say something really...
It was crazy.
It was terrible.
But what I'm saying is she gave that speech and she got a lot of accolades for it, and yet she's one of the women that was harassed or assaulted by Harvey Weinstein.
Was she?
Oh.
Yes, and she went back. Whoa. She went back to Hollywood, and everybody said, "Way to go, Ashley!" But don't talk about Weinstein. And I think she blew a gasket. And I think a bunch of other actresses blew a gasket too.
Here's.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I do. But what I think that it's taken a long time for women to evolve.
Yeah.
This far, And I also think that we no longer, in order to defend ourselves, need the superior upper body strength. Shit, we've got weapons
Yeah,
now.
that's-
You know.